This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Chronicles. My name is Sarah, and today I'm here with my husband, Jeremy.
Hello.
And we are back for our second episode after our extended break.
Yes, we are back, and this week we're talking more about autism and representation, this time through reality television, specifically the show Survivor.
During the, I don't know what season number it was.
48.
Okay, during the 48th season of Survivor. It just ended like a few weeks ago, actually. We got interested in watching it together as a family. I never really watched much Survivor before, so I'm not like a Survivor follower. But the story of the young woman, Eva, who was on the show this season, really got me interested in hearing about my son being interested in Survivor and him feeling represented is what made me interested in watching this season.
Yes, so we found out about Eva through my work at the local news station I work at in Providence, Rhode Island. She is currently pursuing her doctorate at Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. So one of my coworkers actually interviewed her because she was the first openly autistic contestant in the show's history. That doesn't mean she's the first autistic contestant. That just means she's the first one who has been open about her diagnosis and was upfront with it to producers and everything. Given that the show has been on the air since 2000, I'm willing to bet there have been other autistic contestants, maybe even some people on the show who did not know they were autistic at the time and got a diagnosis later in life. But as of the 48th season, they had never had somebody on the show openly autistic until Eva came on.
Yeah, well, you were going to watch Survivor anyway, because you usually do, don't you?
I have been watching Survivor off and on since about season 2, when the Australian Outback. I started watching it then because was it February of 2001, when I was living in Mississippi, a bad storm came through and knocked out cable where I was at the time. Remember cable? Honestly, a lot of people got a lot worse, so I wasn't complaining about only having one channel, but all I had was CBS, so I watched what was on CBS until the cable was repaired. And then from there, I popped out, popped back in around season 8. And I watched off and on through season 40, which was when they had 20 previous winners face off. And then I felt like that was a good spot to end it. And I didn't really watch it again until season 45, when another Rhode Islander was on it, who I got to meet through my work as well from there. And because several of my coworkers actually knew this guy. So I watched his season, but that was 45 and this was 48. And this was my first time back since 45.
Yeah. And I just want to say that also our son, Remy, he has been interested in watching Survivor and has been asking about it even before Eva came on to play the game and be on the show. So I just want to get those facts clear. She was we were all rooting for her.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that we were all rooting for her in this house. I watched the first season of Survivor, parts of it, but really didn't get into it too much. I knew the tagline, the tribe is spoken, the pop culture references. I'm familiar with some of the popular New England players like Richard Hatch and Boston Rob, because being from Southern New England, you kind of
Elizabeth Hasselbeck.
Yeah, you kind of know. You kind of hear about them. So this was the first time I actually watched. I think I watched almost the whole season with you guys, right?
Yeah, I think you may have missed a couple of episodes because it did start in the middle of the semester, so you were studying while we were watching it. But yeah, a lot of times you'd sit down, and even if you were working on something, would work on it with while watching with us.
Yeah. But anyway, as for Eva, I guess I don't want to say the word coming out as autistic, but she didn't. So the way she played the game, I guess the producers knew that she was autistic.
Yes, the producers knew, the showrunners knew, Jeff Probst, the host, knew, but they did not tell any of the other contestants. They left that up to her to tell someone, which in the first episode of the show, she formed a bond with a guy on her tribe named Joe. He's a fire captain from California, because she understood from how things worked in her life. If she got overwhelmed, she would need someone to kind of anchor her and calm her down. And she decided after meeting with the other members of her tribe that she trusted Joe the most, which makes sense. A fire captain is trained in a lot of these situations, so it makes he probably would have been the best choice just on paper. And they formed a bond that carried them throughout the game. She started telling him, and then she explained about these things, which she calls episodes, which is basically when she's in sensory overload, she can't really control herself, and she needs deep pressure squeezes and like rubbing on her hands is what she needed, but it needed some pressure on it to help calm her and ground her, which when she described that was all too familiar to both of us. Remy, when he's been overwhelmed and in sensory overload, we've had to give him deep pressure hugs to keep him and grounded. So, it was the most realistic representation of autism where Remy falls that we've ever seen. Because normally you'll get something like the show The Good Doctor, which is a great show, but the character on there is more of a savant. You don't get more of a real world representation, which, because this is her being her, you finally got that for people like Remy.
Yes. And I think like you said, you get the Good Doctor and Rain Man and all these other TV characters who are autistic. You don't get real people in reality shows. I mean, I guess there's a few like there's Love on the Spectrum and stuff like that that I haven't really watched, but there's just not a lot of representation for like your everyday autistic person who doesn't have high support needs or isn't overly socially awkward or isn't, I hate to say this term, but isn't obviously autistic. Eva basically had to go into sensory overload before people realized she was on the spectrum.
Yes, so that brings us to one of the most poignant moments of the season. This was in episode 5. At this point, they've had a tribe swap, and when they drew their buffs, Eva and Joe are now separated. They're at a challenge, and every member of the tribe is required to complete a portion of the challenge. Eva for immunity, and Joe's tribe is done because there's 3 tribes. Joe's tribe is done; they've got immunity and reward. Eva's tribe is trying to get immunity and trying to avoid going to tribal council. She's the last one, and she is struggling with this challenge, and she ends up basically forcing herself into sensory overload to complete it. And at that point, she can't calm herself. She's crying. She's obviously in physical pain, but also in emotional pain because she's overwhelmed and she doesn't know how to process this. And you can see Joe eyeing her, wanting to go over and help, but the rules of Survivor do state you're supposed to stay with your tribes. And at that point, Jeff Probst, knowing about Eva's story, and also seeing what is going on, made the call, because he is the executive producer as well as the host, to let Joe go over and hug her and try to ground her. And he did, and you saw an amazing bonding moment. And from there, she was willing to open up to everybody in the game at that point about her diagnosis, about what they needed. And everyone was very supportive of her because when they realized why she was doing certain things, she was doing certain idiosyncrasies that she has that can be connected to this autism spectrum that they might not have picked up right away, but once they were made aware that she is autistic, it's like, oh, that makes sense, because they've learned, even if it's just superficially, they've at least learned certain things that happen. So it wound up being one of the most poignant moments the show has ever been able to produce in 48 seasons on the air.
Yeah. It had me in tears, I'm not gonna lie. And I do not cry often. Still don't cry much. But it definitely had me in tears watching clips of it later. I think that it's hard to be, especially in a game where you can't be your true self sometimes, and everyone's kind of out to get you. I think that everything can be a strength and a weakness. And I think that Eva realized this when she was playing the game, and that's why she wasn't in such a rush to, just say, hey, this is another layer of who I am. I also want to say this about her. She was an incredibly strong player and a very likable person. Based off of what I've seen, and I don't know if it's just editing, but she's obviously a very good competitor. Like she's a strong woman, a strong young woman, and that's admirable. She's obviously very intelligent. She's, a student at Brown University. You don't get in there easily. It's a tough school. And she's a beautiful girl, so she's got all three going for it, and she just seemed to have a very likable personality as well. She seemed to be one of the most genuine, authentic characters. I think that it's possible that it's harder to lie when you're on the spectrum. It's harder to be dishonest, and that's also kind of a misconception. Well, yes and no, it depends. I think that lying just takes so much energy out of people, and I think a lot of people on the spectrum just don't like to be dishonest. I think she was really, truly a genuine character. Watching her, I felt like she was relatable more so than some of the other characters. And she definitely belonged in the top three.
Like, she addressed in interviews promoting the show, and the interviews that my TV station did with her, she addressed that one of her biggest weaknesses was because she is on the spectrum. Many times, she'll miss social cues and might not understand if someone's lying to her. And so she was afraid that was going to be an easy way to get her voted out. Didn't happen. She made it all the way to the final three, where she finished in second place. So, but she found the right people who were willing to work with her. I'm certain there's some editing to it that helped along the way, but she seemed to, from what I can tell from how I've seen, in post press and everything, the other players saying she was herself the entire time. She wasn't hiding, but hiding a persona like some people were, for better or worse for those people. She was just being herself, and it got her to second place.
100%. And then I do want to talk about the other moment of sensory overload that she had with the fire making challenge.
Yes, in the finale, when they get to the final four, if you don't watch Survivor, I forget, probably about a decade ago, instead of doing a traditional vote, they went to a fire making challenge between. So person who wins immunity automatically makes it into the final three. They pick one person to go with them, and the other two square off in a fire making challenge. Well, the guy who won it, Kyle, he chose Eva's partner in crime, Joe, to go to the finals with him, and had Eva face off against his biggest ally, Kyle's biggest ally in the game. Her name was Camilla, in a fire making challenge. So, knowing they were going to be making fire, Camilla and Eva both go out to separate places to start practicing, so that they'll be how to make fire that night. Now, both of them had been making fire on the island, but there's a little bit difference from just trying to make a fire to warm up some food versus making fire under in a competition circumstance. So they go, and Eva is struggling with keeping the fire going in this sense, to get it as high as it needs to be while she's practicing. And so she starts having another episode where she's in sensory overload, and Joe goes and finds her, and again does the same thing he did before, rubbing her hands together, helping ground her. And he even offers to her to take her place in the fire making challenge and let her have the spot in the final three, at which point she declines, saying this is something she has to do. And then they get around to the fire making challenge. And when they're there, she is doing a great job of making the fire. She is blowing Camilla away, but she can't get the fire up. It's big, but it's not going up to where it can burn a rope to raise a flag to win the challenge. It's going sideways. It's going there. So, and you could see her not knowing and going, just not understanding, and just always going, what am I doing wrong? She's several times, she's like, what am I doing wrong? And Joe and Kyle at the final three, and Camilla right there beside her, openly cheering her on and giving her advice to help her get there. The fact that's impressive in and of itself, that what she has been able to do with her time on the island is to get somebody who is competing for her chance to win the game against Eva to cheer her on as she's competing. That is impressive. And it just shows the importance of Eva just being herself rather than trying to be anything else. As we said, Eva wins that challenge. She gets to the final three. She gets 2 of the 8 votes and finishes in second place.
Yeah, and I think that what you said was important too, about how even her competitors were cheering her on. You know, in life we always wonder if we're liked. Do people like me? Or maybe I'm the only person who wonders that, but I think people do wonder that a lot of times, you know, am I liked? Do I have friends? Did I really make an authentic connection? And it seems like her being herself, she's just a likable person. I think her character, well, it's not a character, it's really who she is, right? Or,
Yeah.
okay. Well, I think some people go on to Survivor and kind of play up certain aspects of, how do I say this without sounding all right, so Kyle, who won the show, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So he was dishonest about certain things about his life that were stupid things to be dishonest about. Like,
I don't. Some of it was no. This is we're going to devolve into a conversation about Kyle, but I get your point.
or like other players, like they'll bring parts of their personality and they'll kind of make them bigger than they are in real life.
Yeah, but that's kind of what you're advised to do for TV because it makes TV more compelling.
I get it, but just being yourself is so important, and I think, I don't know, I think she played really well. I wished she would have won. It's not really up to me, but also I have a little bit of a bias, where in a sense of where my son was like, hey, for the first time ever I see myself or someone similar to me on TV, even though it was a woman, and my son is a 14-year-old boy. He's like, this is the closest TV's ever gotten to representing me. So that gives me a little bit of a bias right there.
Yeah, like I said, from the interviews we did, and also with what we've dealt with our children in sensory overload, wanting to see good representation for them so that they can see what that someone like them is able to go out there and be a success, so they can also pursue whatever they want and pursue success in whatever it means to them. That I was all for. I would have loved if she'd have won. Realistically, the Survivor fan in me watching the game thought she was going to finish third, just from what I know about Survivor from the seasons I've watched it. I kind of figured she wasn't winning, but the fact that she got 2 votes, she actually beat Joe, who for the edit of the season made look like he was going to win, because he only got 1 vote and Kyle got 5. So we saw her, and she swayed 2 people who, quite frankly, said going into the fire making challenge weren't going to vote for her. So she went from 0 votes to 2 between the fire making challenge and her final tribal council, where she was again just unequivocally herself.
I guess going, not so much talking about Survivor, but talking more about the representation, or going more into the representation. I think that this opens the door it's a small step, but it opens the door for people who are autistic, who want to be open about their autism, how it affects them. Because the fact of the matter is, autism affects everybody differently. Everybody that is autistic is not the same as the person sitting next to them who may also be autistic. That's just the way it is. There's different levels of support needs. There's different triggers. There's just different ways that it affects people. And I think that opening the door in especially in reality TV where people can be relatable, where they're supposed to be like everyday people, having that door open where like openly autistic, regular people, not savants and not, profoundly autistic people, just regular autistic people can go on and be on TV and represent and show who they are and show the world like, hey, this isn't something to be afraid of. You don't have to be afraid of me. You don't have to stigmatize me because of my diagnosis. If you drop a box of matches, I'm not going to look at you and tell you exactly how many are in there. But, I can still do incredible things because I'm a person and everyone can do incredible things.
Absolutely. And, more representation like that is what we need everywhere. Scripted television, reality television, just more like that.
Yeah. And I'm trying to be careful with my word choices here and try to use this is why there's so many pauses. I'm trying to use my words very carefully because right now the autism community is very broken. There are arguments between, autistic individuals, parents of children who are autistic, parents of children who are profoundly autistic, and there's all different opinions and views on how we should be representing autism and whether or not we should be celebrating autism. I think we should be celebrating everybody's uniqueness, but I understand that there's hard things, but I just want to make sure that I'm being as neutral as possible with my words because I don't want to cause more damage to an already broken community. My goal is to advocate for everybody and try to bring as many people together as I can. And that's like one of our goals here at Caregiver Chronicle.
Absolutely.
I just had to throw that side note in. I'm sorry, guys. So if I'm being way too choosy with my words, that's why. But overall, I enjoyed watching this season of Survivor. Will I watch another season of Survivor? I probably not. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Someone has to really appeal to me in like a good way.
I know Remy has already expressed interest in watching season 49. I don't know anything about that other than it premieres in the fall. I have an interest in watching season 50 because they're bringing back some of my favorite players. They're also bringing back players from seasons I didn't see, so maybe I can see what those people are like. And at the end of the day, in terms of Survivor, I thought they probably should have wrapped it up with season 40, but I'm glad they didn't because while season 48 was not a well-liked season among certain viewers because it was too much of old school Survivor for the new school fan, it provided important representation that I have been wanting to see ever since I learned about Remy's diagnosis because it was clear from the moment he was diagnosed that he and Joey were very different with how autism defined their characteristics. But both have made it clear in how they do things that autism doesn't define them. It just defines certain characteristics.
Yeah.
And I loved seeing that autism could define certain characteristics of Eva, but she didn't let it define her. She just went out there and let Eva define Eva.
Yeah, and I thought that was the beautiful part of it. And like I said, to me, she was easy to root for because she was strong. She was really, really good in the competitions. She's obviously very smart, very beautiful girl, obviously very likable, and she just seemed very relatable to me and just very authentic, where other characters were kind of a little bit more shady, sketchy, or they were just way too aggressive, like right from the start, like way too over the top aggressive. And so to me, she was one of the most likable characters. She was the most likable character, I think. But
I can see that.
I always root for strong
Yeah.
women.
I can see that. I can see how Joe could have been the most likable character. For fans of New School Survivor that are all about big moves, Kyle and Camilla were making big moves behind the scenes. So I can see why they were likable. But yeah, Eva, if you're just looking at someone being themselves, I think Eva leads the pack there.
Yeah. So I guess, like I was saying before, I hope that this opens the door for more autistic people, openly autistic people, to be on reality TV as themselves and not just a diagnosis. I think that it's so important, again, to have that representation. And, my son, maybe he'll see someone else that's like him and just feel validated again. Or maybe someone else's son will see somebody and be like, oh my God, that's exactly how I feel, and feel validated. That's a powerful feeling when you're the only person who's affected by something in a specific way in your home or that you're close with. It's really hard to feel validated even around people who really care about you and really want to do what's best for you or want to help you. Sometimes it's a level that I can't always relate to as a mom. I'm not autistic, so I just can't relate to certain things with him and his feelings when he gets overwhelmed. It's like, buddy, like, I don't understand why you're overwhelmed. We did all kinds of great things today, and buddy is, and again, we just go in with the deep pressure and like, okay, let's go do something calming now. Let's go find a quiet place. We can be having the best day ever, and he can get overwhelmed. I gotta figure out what I can do to support him in those moments. And I don't know how to relate to that feeling because usually if I have the best day ever, I'm energized and ready for more. We're just different. Our minds are just different, and that's it. And I think, again, that representation is so powerful and so important.
I can't say any more, can't say it any better myself. The representation this season was excellent. As we said, our son saw someone similar to him that he could look up to, and we're grateful for that. And we are just happy that we got to see it. Like I said, with that, we're going to wrap it up, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode.